Up basically 24 hours?
Yes, it was a long day, but ultimately New Yorkers deserve a mayor that'll hustle as hard as they do. And right now what I'm feeling is excitement and energy and ultimately immense gratitude at this opportunity to be the Democratic nominee for the mayor of the city of New York.
When are you going to go to sleep, if I can ask that question?
Well, last night I think I went to sleep around 4 in the morning.
There you go. And you got up at what time?
I got up at about 8 a.m.
Okay, well, you've got some.
So I got 4 hours.
Before we get into all this
Yeah.
and the weeds, how do you feel? Not politically, I'm talking about personally. How do you feel about what happened last night?
That was incredible to see what we had built over so many months and what New Yorkers had won. Because in politics, it's very easy to simplify a victory as being of a candidate. But ours was a campaign of 50,000 people who knocked on 1.5 million doors, who made more than 500,000 phone calls. This was their victory.
And no one else in this candidacy, all those people, did anything like that.
No, this was distinct. And I think for a long time we've been told that mayoral races are ones that are won or lost on the airwaves, on the amount of money you can raise for the ads that you can share with New Yorkers. And those are important. But ultimately, we believe in a politics of no translation. And there's no better example of that than New Yorkers speaking directly to New Yorkers, where you knock on someone's door and you talk to them about why you've just walked up 5 floors of a 6th-floor walk-up for the 2nd hour in a row.
Or across the entire place of Manhattan, right? Which you did all the way. How long did that take you?
That took about 6 hours.
There you go. How'd you do?
It was lovely.
And you stopped where? Food, I guess, right? Or elsewhere?
I did get a slice from Cornet's.
There you go.
I grew up in Morningside Heights, and that was my favorite pizza place as a kid.
Before I get into the weeds again, I'm dying to hear this. What did your wife say about the victory? What did your parents say? I know they were up there.
They were just overjoyed and overcome. You know, there were many of us that had prepared for a long night of analysis, of tabulations, of calculations, and ultimately the night was quite short as it came to the result itself.
Yeah.
And that began with the phone call that I received from Governor Cuomo, where he spoke to me about conceding this nomination, and I spoke to him about the necessity of bringing our city together. And I appreciated his graciousness in speaking about what this campaign has achieved.
And what did he say? What person brought that phone to you? What did he really say?
He congratulated me and told me that it was my night, and that what we had built as a campaign was something that had connected with New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and many New Yorkers who had not seen themselves in our politics.
Yeah.
And I told him sincerely that my focus now is on moving beyond a historically contentious primary and leading a city.
And now people are seeing you because of programs like this, and understanding where you have been through, where you've been, and where you're going, and who you are.
Yeah.
So let's get down to it, I think. You come from a successful family. Mom's a filmmaker.
Yes. Very
Very famous films. I happen to love those films. Dad's a professor at Columbia. You have a sort of upper middle class upbringing, and yet your politics seem deeply set to the plight of so many struggling New Yorkers who are supporting you. Kind of a throwback, I was thinking, to the anti-war movement 50 years ago.
And I think it's so much of my politics is built on the precedents we've seen in this country of what's possible when we fight for working people.
This is like a surprisingly decent interview. It's shocking. I hope I'm not speaking too soon, but this is this is a normal interview, which is unexpected because my immediate assumption is that every type of interview that Zohran is supposed to get is supposed to be contentious, you know?
And I think especially in this city, in a mayor's race, I've often looked back at Fiorello LaGuardia as an example of someone who was able to not only combat the anti-immigrant animus of his time, but also deliver dignity to working class New Yorkers who were being denied that. And I was so lucky to be raised by 2 parents who have inspired me over the course of my life, and also with whom I moved to the city at the age of 7, where I grew up.
That's the same mayor that Giuliani says he liked too, right? Do you remember that?
One of the very few things
Do you have in common? Yes,
common.
maybe that might be true.
Yes.
You call yourself a democratic socialist. The word socialist, of course, has been vilified and used to attack you specifically. How do you define being a democratic socialist?
I think of the words of Dr. King, who decades ago said, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, there must be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country. And it gets to the heart of the matter, which is inequality. And my belief that every New Yorker should have what they need to live a dignified life. It shouldn't be something that they can be priced out of. And that's why at the heart of our campaign is this focus on freezing the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants, making the slowest buses in the country fast and free.
There are in the country about 1,200 people who are just wealthy beyond anything, right? Mm-hmm. And in 25 years ago, there were only about 40 of them. Now there are 1,200 people who are worth more than $1 billion and much more than that. That has to be addressed at some point because they're not paying the taxes that the rest of us are paying.
Absolutely, and I think it gets to the heart of the matter, which is that there is enough money for a life of dignity for all people. It's just a question of whether we have the political will to ensure that that money is being spent on delivering that dignity.
Let's move on to the ambitious agenda, and I think that's what you would call it. Your supporters call it that. Two of your biggest proposals: free buses in New York and $30 an hour minimum wage. If I'm not mistaken, that's really controlled not by the mayor, but by the state, the ambassadors, and all that, the assemblies that you're a member of. Mm-hmm. You could have been doing that there. You don't have much control of that, but that's what you're running on.
We've seen that any mayor that has a vision for the city that matches the scale of the crisis understands that it will require Albany's partnership.
Yes, I know.
One of the most celebrated examples
Cuomo
of what
said he's
local
not going to
government
run.
can do.
I know. I saw. We shall see. Okay. New York Post reports that Andrew Cuomo is not going to run in the general, but we shall see.
Is universal pre.
I feel like they're working on some. I think there's. I'll be comfortable when he wins in the general. Until that moment, my comfort level is not going to be high.
Okay.
New York Post reveals Andrew Cuomo to drop New York City mayoral bid after blistering primary defeat to Zohran Mamdani. Sources: Cuomo no more. Andrew Cuomo will drop out of the mayor's race after his humiliating defeat. Dude, New York Post is so funny. Yesterday, they were talking about Andrew Cuomo as the savior of New York against the terrifying Zohran Mamdani win, a potential Zohran Mamdani victory, okay? And today, they're immediately back to just shitting on him. Andrew Cuomo will drop out of the mayor's race after his humiliating defeat against socialist Zohran Mamdani, sources told the Post, as the ex-governor's donors and backers desert him and weigh whether to boost Eric Adams. Several insiders close to Cuomo camp said Wednesday that thrice-elected Democrat will almost certainly not run in the general election as an independent candidate, seeing no obvious path to victory. The understanding is he's not running. Every indication is that he doesn't want to do it, and the money wouldn't be there if he did want to do it, said one of the sources, a leader from a prominent union. Why does somebody give Unc a soundboard? Oh, dude. Yeah, young black voters are the best youth demographic for Zohran, by the way. Look at that. This is what I was saying, okay? This is why I get so mad when I talk about the black boomer voting bloc. And even then, when I'm doing like demographic voter pattern analysis, people still chirp at me. And like the people who are chirping at me who are black are most likely in the Mamdani supporting block anyway. The white male performance is underwhelming. There's just a lot of them. Okay. Something. Black folks don't rock with socialism like that. I know. Exactly. Anyway, been teasing my mom about Gen X black people and their inability to keep up with the times as of late, and she's always defending them. After the New York mayoral election, she's finally agreeing. I'm a black Zoomer woman, by the way. Yeah, I mean, it's just the reality of the matter is it's the most reliable voting bloc for the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party uses and abuses this voting bloc in the primaries and basically weaponizes it against whoever they see as like even if they're a good candidate. The Democrats will use this machine, this turnout machine, to literally weaponize it against whichever candidate they want to destroy. And then they will cynically turn around and be like, it's because this person is racist. No, it's not because the person is racist. It's because you said the person was racist on television, or you found another reason. You said the person was unelectable. It's not even the racism that I think sways black voters as much, because like black voters, especially boomer black voters, know everyone's racist. It's more so unelectability, the fear that like if this person comes into power, that they're going to be a weaker candidate down the line, and then an even more racist Republican is going to end up winning the election. That's what it is. Older black voters especially are particularly defensive voters. It's the one group of voters that unironically does engage in defensive voting. Okay? That's it. That's not the hood, though. The hood not rocking with Zohran, for real. I live in a studio in Bushwick, and I'm from Iowa, but I'm really tapped in with the hood vote, bro, for real. They're all voting Adams. Trust me, it doesn't matter. I've never been above 86th Street in Manhattan. I'm tapped in with the hood, bro. Yeah. He's not rocking with us, so we're not rocking with them. Wouldn't it be good if Cuomo stayed in to split the right wing and centrist vote between Cuomo, Adams, and Silva? Probably not.
That was only possible because we had a mayor who championed it and went to Albany to get the funding necessary for it. And I think even when we're thinking about congestion pricing in this moment, that's an idea that, again, needed the partnership of Albany. So what I'm proposing is firmly in line with that precedent. And I've also seen firsthand there's a lot of interest in delivering the transformation of the slowest buses in the country into ones that are fast and free. And we're talking about $700 million in the context of a state budget of more than $250 billion and a city budget of about $113 billion.
Do you worry that you're not going to be able to pay for all that? That's a lot of money happening, right?
I'm confident that we'll be able to pay for it because it's, as you said, that the money is there. You know, we're speaking about a city where we have some of the wealthiest people in the world. We have some of those most profitable corporations. And we've put forward a plan that we would raise $10 billion in additional revenue, $9 billion from two major taxes. The first, matching the state's top corporate tax rate to that of New Jersey, 11.5%. That raises about $5 billion. And the second is increasing personal income taxes on the top 1% of New Yorkers. These are New Yorkers who make $1 million or more a year and only doing so by 2%.
But here's the other reality that we've seen, and you've seen since you've been here for a while. You want to raise taxes on people as they're fleeing the city because it's too expensive. So many people who are an upper middle class, like your family was, are saying, I just can't afford this anymore. We can't afford this. I can't afford it if I want my kids to go to college.
You know, what I have been speaking about, however, is not the upper middle class. It's the top 1% of New Yorkers, someone who makes $1 million a year or more. And what we found in analysis from the Fiscal Policy Institute is that those New Yorkers leave at 1/4 the rate of others. And when they do leave, they leave to other states that are considered high tax, New Jersey or California. And what it comes back to is what motivates their departure isn't fiscal policy, it's quality of life. And that's something that unites many New Yorkers, a feeling that we pay too much and we don't receive the quality that's necessary. And ultimately, what we need in this city is a city government that is functioning effectively and is using every single dollar efficiently.
So much of the money that they're spending come from Donald Trump raising taxes in his first go-around on property owners in New York and so many other blue states. New York isn't benefiting from that at all. Some people would say, I'm not sure I would have bought a house if I knew I wasn't going to have a tax deduction on some of those salt expenses.
And I think it's an example of the fact that Donald Trump is looking to attack not just New York City, but blue cities across the country. And what we've seen is that his single hallmark achievement of his first term were tax cuts for those corporations and those billionaires. And in the proposal I've put forward over the course of this campaign, at the end of it, those 1% and the most profitable corporations would still pay less in taxes than they had before Donald Trump.
And you're getting here cheers from that, I think, from a lot of people who are watching this. I asked you about how you paid for them. There was one thing we read recently, Political, saying it's going to cost up to tens of billions of dollars, what you're saying. It's going to cost.
So that's not accurate as it pertains to free buses and universal child care. That's talking about a long-term vision for the construction of housing. And that gets back to the most important issue in this city, which is housing and affordability of housing. Okay. We have said that we need to make it easier to build housing. We've also said that the public sector has a role to play in constructing immediately affordable housing. And that's where we believe we need to invest further so that we can build 200,000 homes across New York City.
Clearly, you've educated yourself about all this. You're not coming in blindly, that's clear. But you're 33 years old. I remember when I was 33. It's a good part of your life, there's no question. You spent 4 years in the assembly. You've never run a big organization, much less a big city. New York City's budget for the next year is more than $114 billion. That's roughly a third of it is in New York City schools. And there are some who wonder, directly at you, not menacingly.
This guy's a great interviewer, straight up. No, come on, dude. He's 33 years old. That's a historically, unprecedentedly young mayor, okay? Like, even when he's asking that question, he's like doing a great job asking it. These are fair questions. Everybody needs to calm down. Zohran is not a baby. He's literally 33 years old.
No, but they would say, do you have the skills to run this city? What have you done to give you the skills?
A campaign gives a glimpse of how one would run the city. And the campaign that I've run has been the most competent and innovative of any in this cycle. It's one where we have gone from 2 full-time staff to managing more than 50,000 people, where we raised the $8 million that we can spend in this race at record-breaking pace. And we've shown that our commitment is to competence, it's to outcomes, it's to excellence. And ultimately, any leader is defined by the team that they put together. And I'm lucky that the team that I have put together in this campaign is one of the best and the brightest. And ultimately, that's what I would bring to City Hall.
And congratulations, and I understand why you're saying that, but Zohran, that's a very different thing running an campaign election, and it's not even the final campaign. Different than running a city. It is different.
I think there is nothing that can truly prepare you for running the city of New York. What can prepare you, however, are moments that you have to meet time and time again, ones that increase in scale and challenge. And one of the most meaningful things to me over the course of this race has been meetings that I've had with deputy mayors and commissioners from a wide variety of mayoral administrations in understanding just what this team could look like.
Have you thought, given this thing you're thinking about maybe becoming mayor, and it looks like you have a better chance than you did 24 hours ago, do you think about who you want to come to work for you?
I think about it all the time. And I think that's at the heart of delivering on this mandate we've been given about making the most expensive city in the United States affordable, is who you bring around yourself. And it has to be in stark contrast to what we've seen under Eric Adams, where so much of those decisions was driven by a politics of patronage. We have to deliver on a politics of principle.
You could very well run against Mr. Adams, and it looks like you're going to, and a Republican too. What do you think about this? What goes through your head when you say, I'm going to go against these two guys?
When I started this race, I thought I was running against Eric Adams. And in many ways, I was prepared for it.
And things changed.
Things changed. Yes. They did. But ultimately, the race is the same. It's about making the city affordable. And my critique of Eric Adams then is the critique I have of him now. He has exacerbated a cost of living crisis. He raised the rent on more than 2 million New Yorkers by 9%. He increased water bills to the highest they've been in 13 years. And he sided with Con Edison when they wanted to increase gas and electric bills by $65 a month. This is someone who has put his thumb on the scale against working and middle-class New Yorkers. We need someone who will actually use every tool to provide relief to those same New Yorkers.
And what has been his role with Mr. Trump?
It has been one of collaboration. And ultimately, we've been told time and again that through his collaboration, he could protect our city. But we do not see that protection. We've seen $80 million taken out of a city bank account. We've seen New Yorkers being disappeared and detained, whether in their apartment building lobby or when they're going for a regular check-in at Federal Plaza. And ultimately, we are seeing an example of what it looks like to sacrifice the city in the interest of a federal administration that has no interest in serving the people of the city.
And what is his interest right now in the city of New York?
Eric Adams?
Yeah, no, Mr. Trump.
It is one time and again of seeking to make it.
You may have to do battle.
Yes, yes, and I'm prepared to. And I think for a long time I've said that we deserve a leader who can call the Trump administration what it is, which is authoritarian, and be able to do so while not seeing a reflection of oneself in the mirror. And I say that because for too long, we have seen leaders who are unwilling to fight back against what is an attack, not just on immigrants, but on the very fabric of the city and this country. And I am ready to do just that.
And what is going to be, one of the things that Mr. Cuomo said he could do that you cannot do, he said, was he can do battle with Mr. Trump.
Well, I am very confident of being able to do so because I stand here before you today having done battle over many, many months against someone that I was told was impossible to beat. And here we are. And ultimately, what Donald Trump needs is a leader in New York City that has the same donors as him, which is why that there's so much reporting over the fact that there was a good relationship between him and Andrew Cuomo. Ultimately, what I present is someone who is funded by more than 20,000 people who have given me an average donation of around $80.
I'm going to talk about public safety, if you want to get into that.
Please.
How do you see the role of police in New York City? What is the role of the NYPD in people's lives?
The NYPD play a critical role in creating public safety. And when I've had conversations with rank and file police officers, what I've heard time and again is a frustration where they signed up to join the force to tackle serious crimes. And instead, they're being asked to play the roles of social workers and mental health professionals. And ultimately, that ask to play nearly every role to respond to nearly every failure of the social safety net is one that is preventing them from addressing those serious crimes. And we're seeing that play out where New Yorkers' concerns are not...
You know what's really ironic about this assessment, this argument? He's literally describing defund the police without ever saying those words. Because this is the argument that people were making when they said defund the police, which was that there is a need for social workers as opposed to cops, because cops should not be addressing all of these calls. They should not be the ones responding to all these fucking calls. Don't say, oh, you say shut the fuck up? Oh, because you're telling me to not to give the game away. Like, instead of just constantly saying defund the police, he's just describing what it is. And it's ironic because, like, if people did this, if Democrats actually treated this with like a little bit of seriousness, you could have just as easily made what people understand when people say defund the police into this. Okay? And that's what's so annoying about it. If Democrats didn't spend every waking moment shitting on defund the police as a slogan and basically leaning into the right-wing framing of the word, I think that there might have been better legislation crafted around this issue. Hassan, you are being counterproductive. No, it's not the slogan that is at fault. It's the fact that people didn't just like immediately work to explain what this means and instead constantly run around and antagonize against this. I hate this shit. Anyway, one of the biggest hurdles that Zohran will have to overcome is the police in in New York. NYPD is a psychotic military, okay? They are insane. They have maximum power in the city. It will be very difficult for him. That'll be the hardest hurdle to climb. And even Bernard knows this. Bernie Sanders says Zohran Mamdani should try to win the endorsement of the police union. Mamdani's going to likely be running the nation's largest police department. And for all his faults, Mayor Eric Adams is overseeing crime going down. You were a mayor. What does Mamdani need to do to not like crime, which is admittedly somewhat out of mayor's control, create a national vulnerability for the left? I was a mayor, and you know what? When I ran the first time, I won the endorsement of the Burlington Patrolmen's Association. When I ran for election, I won the support of the Burlington Patrolmen's Association. My third time I ran, I got the support of the Burlington Patrolmen's Association. My fourth term, why? Because we recognize that being a police officer is very difficult work, and our police officers got to be treated with respect to do enormously important work. Now, of course, Bernie's a boomer, and the way that he's describing it is like also in the most boomer ways possible. And you can make that argument in a place like Burlington, Vermont, but NYPD is like a ruthless force of violence. Not to say that like the Burlington Police Department is not, right? I'm sure they also do a ton of awfulness as well. But in comparison to the NYPD, it's like patty cakes, okay? Like it's ridiculous. The NYPD is a demon in and of itself, is a force to be reckoned with. Will they kill Zohran? I mean,
not just in crime itself, but also in our inability to solve those crimes. In the first quarter of 2025.
Yeah, he's talking about Burlington in like when was he the mayor? He says it in the... No, he doesn't. Never mind. When was he mayor of Burlington? Bernie Sanders, Burlington mayor. 1888. Yeah. He was the mayor of Burlington from 1981 to 1989, bro. That's a whole different demon. We're talking pre 9/11. Okay? We're talking pre 9/11, pre 90s even. Okay? That might as well be a whole different planet, a whole different country. Yeah, a Burlington cop killed someone while watching a Matt Walsh video this past year. Yeah, except, once again, Shelburne Sargent was watching a YouTube video at the time of fatal crash. Oh my God, he was watching Matt Walsh while he killed someone in a car accident, of course. Again, new Burlington, different than old Burlington. Like, yeah, the USSR existed.
Only 35% of crimes were solved. And we want to make sure police can actually do their...
Like, even in the 80s, as a matter of fact, like, look at the NYPD in the 80s versus the NYPD now. Or rather, look at the NYPD in the 80s versus the Burlington Police Department in the 80s, okay? There is layers to this. These are very different demons that we're talking about.
Job. I've said time and again, we're going to keep the same number of officers that we have. We're just going to let them actually focus on serious crimes and ensure we hire mental health professionals and social workers to respond to those crises.
Okay, I want to just have you repeat that. You're not saying cut back on the number of cops in New York City.
I have said time and again, I'm sustaining the number of officers.
Because I'm looking at my notes here, and Democrats 5 years ago, they were leveled. The party was leveled. You remember this? When some proposed defunding the police. It was a word that Democrats would come to rue, because they shouldn't have said that. Because it was not what they meant, but they said, we can't do this anymore. That's not what you're saying.
No, I'm very clearly not defunding the police. I'm sustaining the headcount of officers, and I'm looking to actually address the crisis within the NYPD.
I don't like the way he's approaching that, too, because he's not saying nothing about overtime. You know what I mean? Money's got to come out of somewhere, okay? He's not talking about overtime. He's not talking about hazard pay. He's not talking about how he's going to, reorient the police. He's just saying, I'm going to sustain the headcount. I'm going to sustain the headcount of the police.
We're seeing 200
Shut up, Hassan. Shut the up.
Officers leave the department every month. About a quarter are considering departure, and a leading cause is forced overtime. And one of the reasons for that forced overtime is you're asking officers to work doubles and triples, and they're doing that because you're asking them to do every job.
You've proposed addressing the whole...
That's not the reason why they're getting overtime pay. He knows that. That's a great way to reframe it, though. God, he's such a good communicator. It's crazy. Before people say, Hassan, shut up, like, you have to understand, he knows what he's talking about. I know what he's talking about. And you think the cop unions don't know what he's talking about? They know what he's talking about. They know exactly what he means when he says those things, okay? They're going to be antagonistic to him anyway. This is not for cops. This is not for the police union. This is not for the police, the Sergeant Benevolence Association. This is for the audience to be more receptive to the message.
Homeless problems.
They don't know they're stupid. Cops are stupid, but the one thing they ain't stupid about is demanding overtime pay. How dare you?
By helping them stay in empty real retail space in some giant subways. Is that your plan?
That's not the plan.
Okay.
What I've said is...
So we've been wrong about that, right?
Yes, that's been a misconception in that my proposal is addressing the fact that 75% of commercial units within the MTA are vacant. And those are units we could transform to provide immediate medical service to any New Yorker in need and connections to long-term care. The way that we have to serve homeless New Yorkers is not by keeping them within a subway station, but getting them out of a subway station to the actual services that they need. And part of that is also housing.
Let's talk about Israel and Palestine for a second. We live in a melting pot. Of course, your success is absolutely, makes it clear last night. Many New Yorkers, though, are worried about comments you have made in the past about the Middle East. Do you support the concept of Israel as a Jewish state?
I've said time and again that I support Israel's right to exist as a state with equal rights for all. And ultimately, my focus is on the 5 boroughs of this city. And I know, however, that New Yorkers' hopes and dreams and fears extend beyond these 5 boroughs. And while I have made very clear my belief in universal human rights and my commitments to that end, I've also made clear a commitment that I am looking to lead every New Yorker, not just those that agree with me, not just those that voted for me. And leadership means having the difficult conversations. It means extending yourself to understand those disagreements and also the complexities of them. And that is something that I look forward to living up to each and every day.
1 in 10 New Yorkers is Jewish. Many have concerns about your stance. You have a second, you can talk to them right now. What do you have to say to them?
Anti-Semitism is a real issue in this city and in this country, and there's no place for it. And I know it in the conversations I've had even with friends who have told me time and again about how that has worn on them. There was a Jewish man in Williamsburg just recently who told me how he locks the very door he used to keep unlocked for years. A friend of mine who, after the horrific war crime of October 7th, told me how he went for Shabbat services at his synagogue, and he was sitting when he heard the door open behind him, and a chill went up his spine as he turned around not knowing who was coming in. what did they mean for him?
Right.
And ultimately, what we need is a city and an administration that protects Jewish New Yorkers and protects every New Yorker. And part of that is actually the commitment to invest 800% increase in anti-hate crime programming, such that we can actually root out the bigotry in this city.
The world, I think, is safe to say, wants peace. Only a few on both sides of the Middle East wars look for continued war. I think that's safe to say. New York's melting pot is all about stopping wars and bringing people together. I think that if the world did what we did, it would be a better world.
This shit is going to get old so fast. I've seen non-political friends talk about how gross Stephen Colbert was. Yeah. No, it's the turning point is here. It's over, dude. Like, the whole constantly badgering people, constantly bashing people over the head with this whole, like, you're anti-Semitic, people think you're anti-Semitic, people are saying you're anti-Semitic, your statements about Israel-Palestine are controversial. All this shit is so played out. And because they've, like, maxed out on this so much that people immediately know what you're talking about, okay? The obvious scary side of this is that it also offers protective cover to a lot of real anti-Semites too. But as far as having a real conversation, as far as having a normal conversation about literally the ongoing ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, it's like that I think is there's a endless amount of freedom now to be able to have that conversation, and it's a good thing. And I'm glad that Zohran didn't fold on that shit, because I think, especially given his background, again, brown, Muslim, socialist, like, this is under different circumstances considered like a demographic that is supposed to play ball unconditionally with the powerful interests, instead of like going up against them and bravely saying, nope. Do you think a Zohran-like candidate would work in a more purple area? I think a Zohran-like candidate would work in a red area. I think a Zohran-like candidate would work in every area. It's just about how much support you would put behind a candidate like that. Democrats have completely removed themselves from the conversation when it comes to deep red districts. They don't even attempt it. They don't attempt to turn deep red districts into purple ones. And they don't even attempt to turn purple districts into blue ones. And they don't attempt to turn blue districts into deep blue districts. I'm willing to bet a guy like Zohran, it doesn't have to be like a Muslim brown guy who says he's a socialist or whatever, but like, look at Greg Kazar, right? Greg Kazar's in Texas. You know what I mean? He's one of the more progressive congresspersons. I think his biggest weakness is Israel, ironically enough, which in this messaging environment, he should be coming out and bouldering and lasering that are pro-Israel. You say Austin, but it doesn't matter. I know Austin is liberal, but it doesn't matter. It's still Texas. I think my local DNC is trying to overhaul the party in our red area to stand by more progressive candidates. I think there are so many. Your affinity for Greg Kazar is so insane, because I think he's good. He's dynamic. He's a close to Zohran, maybe not to the same degree as Zohran, but he is a candidate similar to that. People here like Jasmine Crockett too. See, as opposed to Jasmine Crockett, who I don't like at all, who I think is exactly the type of like young Democrat who's just an establishment Democrat, but with a newer aesthetic. Like, Jasmine Crockett is exactly what you get. At least Crockett tries, man. I don't like her. Kazar just sits back on the sidelines and does all. Tries what? TikTok dances? What I was about to say is Jasmine Crockett is a perfect example of like all show and no blow. Okay. She is literally doing the method of, I'm going to do social media, but I'm not actually going to have like real policies that are associated with it. No substance. She's just clip farming all the time. What do you mean phrasing? You know what I mean, guys. Like an actual punch, an impact. What are your thoughts on Nurdeen Kaswani, the founder of Within Our Lifetime, being iffy on Mamdani, not trying to bait? I have tremendous respect for Nurdeen, but I completely understand why she wouldn't with even Zohran. Like there is a space for every single person, okay? For a lot of people, for a lot of people, like she's an activist, okay? She is an activist with a singular focus. And she's right. She's right to have this singular focus. But of course, running for office is entirely different than that. Running for mayor is entirely different than that. I see this as like a large movement with different parts, with many different moving parts. And I think that activists are necessary. Militancy is a necessity as well. Okay. But then there's also a necessity for politicians who are sympathetic to our cause, that will at times play a more moderate tone, a more moderate role, but that will open up the road for maybe even take away some of the hurdles that would otherwise exist in a contentious, in an otherwise contentious administration. Compare Greg Kazar and Zohran is crazy. Do what the better than Kraga but Zohran? No, I mean Greg Kazar is not. I'm not saying Greg Kazar is similar to Zohran in ideology. I'm saying that Greg Kazar has an opportunity. Like I think he shows good promise, but we'll see.
Would you agree with that?
I would, and I think that's one of the things that makes this city so special, is it's a city that brings the world together, and it's a testament to what's possible when we understand shared humanity at the cornerstone of everything that we do.
Okay. People have concerns about where you stand with President Trump. I want to go over this again. How wedded to the future of this city is he, and how wedded are you?
I am wedded to the future of this city. This is a city that I love, a city that I grew up in, and a city that I want to grow old in, like each and every other New Yorker. And what concerns me is that President Trump's interest in our city oftentimes is one to make an example of us, to attack the very fabric of what makes so many of us to be proud as New Yorkers. And I am going to be the mayor who will stand up for New Yorkers, no matter whether it's because Trump is attacking them on the basis of their documentation, their sexual orientation, or their politics.
Final question, if I could. You were born in Uganda, came here as a child. You're an immigrant success story, no question, at a time when immigration is such a lightning rod issue beyond that, really. What does your success represent to New Yorkers, and what message to immigrants who have come here from around the world, just like your parents did, to get to this great city?
You know, I am like 40% of New Yorkers in that I was born elsewhere. And I came to this city at the age of 7. And my favorite blocks in this city for quite some time were the blocks around Federal Plaza. It's where I got my citizenship, where I was sworn in as someone belonging to this country. And it was one of the greatest days of my life. And it's also where I got married to my wife at the city clerk's office. And yet I know that those same blocks today represent something very different. They represent a fear that New Yorkers have, that they will not see their loved ones again. And that is a fear that is going against what makes so many of us love this city. And I am going to be not only the first immigrant mayor in generations, I'm going to be someone that stands up for each and every New Yorker to ensure that this possibility that in some ways I represent is one that every single person in the city can live out.
There are people who are going to come against you very strongly.
I expect that.
And you say to them what?
I say to them that I will not wither, I will not relent. I am committed, as I was on that first day, to a city for every New Yorker where all of us belong, where all of us can afford. And I know that these threats will not be easy to navigate. I have faced many a death threat. I continue to see threats against myself and my family. And yet I know ultimately that this is not representative of the city. The city is actually represented by a belief in our continued possibility.
Zohran, thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Real
Great
pleasure.
meeting you, and thank you for the interview.
Thank you. I
All
appreciate
right.
it.
Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
That was great. Zohran, Fox News is Zohran, free Zohran propaganda. I have seen it.
And his views are staunch.
It's amazing. The way Fox News is covering Zohran is so awesome. Where they'll just like literally write out what his campaign policies are. And it's so dope because you look like a cartoon villain standing in opposition to like half the shit he wants to do, which is like free school lunch. You know what I mean? They'll be like, this radical wants to give free school lunches to children. He wants to feed the poor.
Staunchly anti-Israel. If he wins the general election, Mamdani would be the most left-wing person to ever serve as a mayor of any city in the United States.
Bernie Sanders, Burlington, mayor of Burlington, Vermont.
His views are far closer to communism than Clintonism. This guy makes AOC.
Wait, since when did these guys make that distinction? I thought Hillary Clinton was a commie. What the? Wait, I thought CNN was Clinton News Network or Communist News Network. How come you make a distinction between Clintonism and communism now? What happened? Damn, all of a sudden, these know the difference. That's so crazy. Oh, look at that. Overton window shifts slightly in the direction. Overton window shifts slightly in the direction of socialism, and they immediately snap to a more reasonable position. All of a sudden, they are reminded that maybe Nancy Pelosi isn't so bad. Maybe Nancy Pelosi actually is a reasonable moderate. All it took was for this dude to win the goddamn primary. They called Joe Biden a communist every day of the week. I'm willing to bet they'll go so far as to say AOC is moderate. She even basically started inferring that AOC is actually a reasonable moderate. This is the reason why it's good to run radical candidates, okay? This is how you pull the Republican Party and the Overton window back. This is how you pull the Overton window to a more reasonable position. You are snapping them back into reality by force. It's not enough. But the inverse of this has been true for the past 3 decades, okay? Because the Democrats have constantly caved and capitulated to the radical positions of the increasingly further right Republican Party, and therefore the Overton window is slammed firmly in the far right now. One socialist mayor, successful mayoral primary candidacy later, immediately these guys are like, well, Nancy Pelosi's got some good ideas. I mean, AOC's got some good ideas. Matt Taibbi, oh no, don't show me this. God, Matt Taibbi's absolutely washed. Et voila. New York City's mayoral race has been won by Zohran Mamdani, no Bernie Sanders style imitator, but the real thing. Son of famed socialist scholar, Marvel superhero to every Jacobin reader, keffiyeh wearing student activist huddled in Judean People's Front type confabs between bell hooks readings and visits to mom and dad on the Upper West Side. In this country, it's the colleges used to subtly pull students back from this ledge before graduation so as not to freak out actual tuition payers. But now the parents are socialists leading here. Anyone tempted to laugh shouldn't. This is the flip side of Trumpism, inevitable for similar reasons, and absent full catastrophe and coming Mamdani ruled Gotham not impossible. God, he sucks so bad. I don't know how he became this person. Ugh, I don't even want to. Matt Taibbi makes me so sad. I don't want to see it. At least Glenn still has like redeemable positions. You know what I mean? But Matt is gone, dude.
He looked like a moderate. He wants government-run grocery stores, plans to make public buses free, is pledging to freeze rent prices, and wants to borrow $70 billion for more affordable housing. Now, in the past, he's called to defund the police, to ban all.
Okay, that sounds great so far.
All guns, create safe injection sites for drug use, and
he drank the anti-trans dog shit. No, he's a Me Too victim, dude. And by that I mean like he had credible accusations of sexual harassment, if I recall correctly, and that bricked his brain. That's when he hit the right-wing grift. That's what it was. He was such a great journalist too. It's crazy. Matt Taibbi was, I hate to admit this, but again, one of my idols, okay? Matt Taibbi was one of my idols. I used to listen to his podcast with Alex Perrine called the Tarfu Report. Alex Perrine is also a brilliant writer, and they were fantastic. And then he just went insane. He went insane. I mean, but then again, so was Glenn Greenwald. And I think like the only person that remains from that 3 journalists that I really looked up to, one I have the honor of calling a peer, a colleague, Jeremy Scahill. Glenn Greenwald has also gone off the deep end in many in many respects. I wonder what Alex Perrine is up to. He was an awesome writer. I haven't really seen much from him at all. Is he still on Twitter? Holy shit. He left Twitter in like 2023. Why Glenn Greenwald? Glenn's all right. He has principles he holds, even if it puts him in odd places. I think he's been speaking highly of Mandani from what I've seen. No, the reasons why I think Glenn Greenwald went off the he went off the rails is because it was other shit. It wasn't like he just has like way too much patience for like reactionary Republicans. Glenn Greenwald has he does this thing. Glenn Greenwald does this thing where he's deeply cynical of the Democrats and resentful of the Democrats for understandable reasons, which I agree with, right? Because I'm cynical and resentful of the Democrats for the same reasons. But then he'll turn around and never apply that same level of skepticism on a lot of issues of the Republican Party. And that's crazy to me because, like, I despise the Democrats because of their closeness to the Republican Party in a lot of policies. I want them to be in opposition to the Republicans. My anger and resentment towards the Democrats doesn't mean under any circumstances will I ever turn around and say the Republicans are doing great. They're actually fantastic. They're like an earnestly anti-war party. Like, they're not. They never have been. They are insanely racist. They're even more racist than the Democrats are. Democrats are pussies. Republicans are assholes. There are a lot of people who I think like kind of lose their minds after like developing deep resentment towards the Democrats. And then they end up finding themselves on like, themselves in this weird place. This weird place where they're closer to the Republicans on some issues, and it's unacceptable.
Decriminalize sex work. Oh, and end all cooperation with ICE. That's a given. He's even too much for the New York Times. Well, typical of Gen Xers, Mamdani has replaced thinking with feeling, and he won big among the young vote. And he feels that New Yorkers should be guaranteed just all sorts of freebies. How to pay for this?
Yeah, I'm surprised how this type of messaging won.
Crisis, and it's called halalflation. Today, we're going to get to the bottom of this. How much does a plate of halal cost right now from this truck?
$10.
$10.
chicken over rice, lamb over rice, $10.
$10?
Yeah.
When you're a street vendor, you have to pay for the food, the plates. How much do you have to pay for your permit?
Before it was 22K.
17,000.
How much does a license cost if you get it from the city?
I think 400.
And who are you paying?
The permit owner.
You're not paying the city.
No.
You pay the permit owner $22,000 just so you can sell this food.
Yes.
And who is this?
A random guy.
Have you ever applied for a permit?
Yeah, I'm applied and no come anything.
It's long wait. I'm number 3,800 something. And
After 2 years, you're number 3,800.
yes.
These are the 4 bills that are sitting in the city council right now, which would give these vendors their own permits and make your halal more affordable. But Eric Adams hasn't said a single word about them. If you own the permit, then how much would you charge for the plate?
$7.
$8.
$8.
Would you rather pay $10 for a plate of halal or $8?
$8.
$8. I think $8 is the way to go.
If I was the mayor, I'd be working with city council from day one to make halal $8 again.
So, how would it taste?
Tastes like $10, but it should be 8.
Yeah. Simple message, baby. Simple message. All right, let's get to Mr. Kaki Kernacki, even though he had some interesting things to say about Zohran that I didn't like.
With the vision of a city that every New Yorker could afford.
Defeat after Tuesday's stunning result in New York City's Democratic mayoral primary. Mamdani, a 33-year-old Democratic socialist, centered his campaign on progressive policies like universal child care and free city buses. His largely grassroots campaign was powered by small dollar donations and a savvy social media presence that included viral videos featuring progressive politicians and pop culture celebrities. Cuomo, meanwhile, ran a more traditional campaign backed by big-name endorsements like former President Bill Clinton and a heavy rotation of TV ads. But controversy and scandal from his time as governor hung large over his candidacy. The result has Democrats around the country wondering what Mamdani's victory really says about the state and the future of the Democratic Party. Here to dive into the numbers behind Mamdani's historic night is NBC News national political correspondent Steve Kornacki, who is where else at the big board. So, Steve, how did he pull off this earthquake?
Yeah, Kristen, I mean, some really interesting numbers here when you take a look inside New York City. First of all, see the overall results here so far. Still some votes to be tabulated here. This won't be official for another week, but as you say, Cuomo's already conceded because, look, you know, Cuomo felt he needed to be ahead after this initial account. They've got that ranked choice system in New York. It was pretty clear that a lot of these other candidates who weren't really in contention when their votes got reallocated in ranked choice, a lot of them had been saying to their voters, if you don't vote for me, vote for Mamdani. So the question was, could Cuomo get far enough ahead last night to withstand that? He didn't even get ahead last night. So that's why this kind of became a foregone conclusion here. We'll break this down now into some of the neighborhoods, though, because I think that's where you really start to see this. Age. You heard Cuomo cite that young voters he said Mamdani had brought out done well with. Here's a tale of two neighborhoods in New York City. This right here, Bay Terrace in Queens. This is the highest median age of any neighborhood in New York City. And look what happened here. The oldest voters, that was Cuomo's base here in this primary. He won by a better than 2-to-1 margin over Mamdani. Take a look now. Morningside Heights. This is up by Columbia University. This is the youngest median age of any neighborhood in New York City. And look what happened here. Mamdani won it. He won it overwhelmingly. Better than 2-to-1 against Cuomo. In fact, Cuomo came in third place in this neighborhood. So that's a pattern you saw. The younger areas were big areas for Mamdani. Also, this is a big divide we talk about in American politics, and it's big in the Democratic Party. The education divide. Mamdani doing so much better with voters who had college degrees, or look at this one, advanced degrees. That is a graduate degree or more. Almost half of the people, the adults in Park Slope, Brooklyn, have at least a graduate degree. And look at this, Mamdani.
Holy Park Slope, Brooklyn. That's crazy.
Got almost half the vote there. Cuomo barely registered, only 13%. A third candidate here, Brad Lander, got 34%. Other end of the education spectrum, more blue-collar, working class, no college degree. Almost 90% of the folks in Fordham Heights have no college degree. Look at this. Cuomo, again, a landslide for Cuomo there. Nearly 60% of the vote, the education divide. And then, of course, we look among non-white voters here. I thought this is interesting because key core traditional part of the Democratic Party base has been black voters. This neighborhood in Queens, 84% of the adult population is black, and Mario Cuomo, listen to me, Andrew Cuomo wins overwhelmingly against Mamdani, but Cuomo did not run up similar numbers among Latino voters and Asian American voters. Taking a look here in Corona, Queens, highest Latino population, a share of the population. Look at this. It was almost a tie here. Cuomo narrowly winning. Cuomo's folks had been hoping, his campaign had been banking on some.
Bro, this is crazy. 61% of Laurelton, Queens, the neighborhood of black voters voted for Andrew Cuomo. That is a machine, dude. That is a turnout machine. Thank God it didn't work in this instance. But holy dude. Holy shit. Older voters in general older voters in general are so predisposed to just like the stability pick. It's just a small neighborhood. It doesn't matter. I mean, it bears itself out across multiple neighborhoods. It's not like just one. Like I'm willing to bet the overwhelming majority, like the majority of the younger black vote, like the youth black vote, went to Zohran Mamdani. Whereas the margins are so much higher for Cuomo when you get to the
Something much
vote.
bigger than that here. Asian American, highest concentration, Flushing, Queens, basically a tie right there as well. So that is those two groups, the Latinos, Asian Americans, early in the campaign, the Cuomo people thought that was something of a firewall. That didn't hold up for them last night, and that was a very big key in.
Mamdani did lose out overall in the black vote, but it's only 18 plus, 7 points below what Cuomo was expecting. Yeah, because of the youth vote. That's what I'm saying. It's because of the youth vote, man. That's what it is. Zohran's coalition ended up more on the Trump curious voter side of things. Obviously, he brought the roof down with transplants, but outside of them, he was specifically strong with R trending demos, Asians, Latinos, and weaker with the ones D's held up, Jewish plus black voters. Zohran's coalition rocks because you can simultaneously frame it as one consisting of demos other Dems do poorly with, but also their declining insular Brahmin base, as he said before. High education voters, wealthy voters, high propensity voters. Yeah, there's like Trump AOC voters out there.